Hurricane watches are in effect for the west coast of Florida. Good evening, I'm Mike Naso with this Sunday evening update on YouTube on the Tropical Update page. We have a lot of activity to talk about. Taking a look out there, this beautiful satellite imagery as the sun starts to set over the Atlantic Ocean. We have a hurricane and a tropical storm. Out here is Hurricane Franklin. This should strengthen into a major hurricane but remain out at sea. However, we have a tropical storm in the Caribbean. This is Idalia, and Idalia is forecast to strike the west coast of Florida by midweek as a powerful hurricane. We also have a couple tropical waves out there we're always watching this time of year, as well as Irwin in the Eastern Pacific. Irwin's not anything to deal with. Let's get straight to it. The latest on Tropical Storm Idalia from the National Hurricane Center as of 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Idalia was at 20.1 north, 85.5 west, winds of 40, so it's a minimal tropical storm. It's moving northeast at 3. Now, yesterday, it kind of scraped the Yucatan moving south, and then it kind of turned, and now it's moving northeast. It's obviously completing a little counterclockwise loop, and then it's going to continue to the north, and we do have tropical storm warnings in effect for the Yucatan Peninsula, the northeast tip, and western Cuba, and a tropical storm watch for the Isle of Youth. We have tropical storm watches here for areas of the Dry Tortugas and areas there from Chokoloskee up to Inglewood, and we now have a hurricane watch from Inglewood, Florida, all the way over to Indian Pass. Now that includes Sarasota, Venice, Tampa Bay, Tarpon Springs, Homosassa, all the way up to the Panhandle. So if you are in the hurricane watch area, start to look at your hurricane plans, figure out what you want to do, if and when evacuations are going to be ordered, and how you should take action. I know everybody there is still really worn out from Hurricane Ian's landfall near Captiva and Sanibel and Fort Myers as a disastrous 150 mile per hour Category 4 less than 12 months ago. Now, this is forecast to strengthen into a hurricane by early Tuesday and make landfall probably either late Tuesday night or very early Wednesday. I wouldn't be surprised if this speeds up a little bit. So right now, 1 a.m. Wednesday is going to be very close to landfall. It could be a little earlier than that or a little later. Anywhere within this cone of uncertainty needs to be prepared. Right now, the forecast has it making landfall in the Big Bend. But look at this. I'm going to show you the map from the last track. Watch the track before, after. Before, after. There has been an ever so slight eastward trend in some of the model guidance. So if you are in Sarasota or Fort Myers and Sanibel, keep a very close eye on this system. Here's the visible satellite imagery, and again, as the sun goes down, it still has some restricted outflow here. This little line I drew is kind of flat on the northern side, but the center of circulation is bubbling there over the Caribbean Sea. Idalia was very cunning. She decided to say, well, I'm not going to go into the Yucatan, I'm going to go back down into the Caribbean and loop around. So instead of this loop occurring over land, which would keep it from developing, the loop is occurring over water, and obviously the waters are where they get that rich fuel source. And by the way, as you've heard, the water in the Gulf of Mexico is boiling, so there's no shortage of fuel for any system that would be over the Gulf, and I think that will help it become a hurricane. Here's the rainfall forecast. As Idalia moves to the north, we're going to have heavy rain, 6 to 10 inches, Tallahassee to Tampa Bay. You could see this actually go up in range over the next day or so. Right now, this is from the National Weather Service predicting heavy rainfall threat, and that means a flood threat. Right now, there is a slight risk of flash flooding anywhere there from the Panhandle all the way down to Naples and then all the way back up to Jacksonville and into the Carolinas. You guys will get in on that moisture, especially as it interacts with a front that will be pushing the hurricane to the northeast. Here's the storm surge forecast. As we saw with Hurricane Ian last year, storm surge is what levels Fort Myers Beach. Storm surge is what levels everything. They got great building codes for wind. 100-mile-an-hour wind, forget about it. But high water rises, very deadly and very destructive. Right now, we're talking in the Big Bend area, 7 to 11 feet. That's right now what the forecast is with a Category 2 hurricane. So if it goes higher than that, you will see these storm surge forecasts increase. Again, from Indian Pass to the Ocklackney River, 2 to 7 feet, anywhere in there. So this area here on the Big Bend, you're not out of the woods if you're to the west side of the storm, but obviously the east side where that surge pushes onshore. Remember, the hurricane last year made landfall in Charlotte Harbor, devastated areas to the south in the right front quadrant of the hurricane where you have onshore flow. So if Idalia makes landfall north of Tampa Bay, you could have a flow directly into Tampa Bay. Last year they had an offshore flow because Hurricane Ian made landfall to the south. So be on the lookout for surge. Longboat Key 3 to 5 all the way down the coastline there. Sanibel, Captivo, Marco Island, all of you guys. And water rises in the Keys as well, at least 1 to 2 feet as Idalia will move to your west. Now, what are we dealing with here? Right now, this is a mid-level water vapor image. We have high pressure, a little mid-level ridge here that's going to build into its east. Okay, that's going to keep the storm moving north-northeast. Then we're going to have troughiness develop that's going to help steer it off towards the northeast and accelerate it, and that's all combining to slam it into the west coast of Florida. And that's the same thing true with Franklin also moving in that direction. So they're both moving in the same direction. It's just Idalia is going to impact land. Franklin will probably avoid the East Coast and Bermuda. Now, the area where it's going to be right now from the National Hurricane Center, you have to look at the cone. But the official forecast Prague, right before landfall, very early midnight Wednesday morning time frame, late Tuesday, early Wednesday, as of now, is a 100-mile-per-hour Category 2 hurricane sitting right there, approaching areas of, say, Cedar Key or the Big Bend region of Florida. That would probably put areas near Clearwater, near Crystal River, in the right front quadrant where the onshore flow would cause storm surge. So we have storm surge advisories if you're in Hernando Beach right now, if you're in Newport Richey, if you're in Tarpon Springs. Start to get ready for what you would do if you're not evacuated and you need to stay away from any water rises. The hurricane models, the H-Wharf model shows a very powerful Category 3 hurricane, a major hurricane. Remember, 3 and above is a major. It shows a major hurricane coming ashore right there in the Big Bend area on Wednesday. The other hurricane models, the HAFS, a newer one, shows an even more powerful hurricane. And then another one shows pretty much the same location, and that's almost a Category 4 hurricane making landfall. So right now, we're thinking a Category 2, be prepared for at least one category higher. And who knows, maybe it won't get as strong as we think, but after last year with Ian, we're not taking any chances. That thing was a colossal beast. Here's the GFS ensembles, all showing a motion to the north-northeast and then eventually accelerating northeast. Most of them clustered between Panama City and Tampa Bay, somewhere in the Big Bend. The European ensembles starting to bend a little more to the right. And yes, remember, last year the GFS said, oh, don't worry, Ian's going to drag north. It's going to come ashore in Pensacola as a Category 1. And the European said, no, it's going to be a monster Category 4 near Fort Myers, Sanibel. And the European was right. So the European is starting to hook to the right here. So don't be surprised if you're in southwest Florida. Don't think, it's going to my north. We can't say that yet. We still have a couple of days to watch and time to prepare. But after last year, come on, don't even risk it. Keep a very close eye on this system. Then we got good old Franklin out there, 100 miles per hour. It's at 25.9 north, 70.0 west. And the winds are strengthening. It's going to become a major hurricane. It's moving north-northwest at 8. And it should continue to move out between Cape Hatteras and Bermuda as a major hurricane, a Category 3. We're not going to deal with it. There's the satellite. Miami, you're looking good right now, but again, the moisture's on its way as Idalia pulls north, and there's Hurricane Franklin eyeing you. Thank goodness this isn't bending straight west over favorable conditions, because it almost looks the way Hurricane Andrew did. But of course, Andrew continued straight west as a Category 5. Franklin's going to be a 3 and turn out. But again, it's scary looking when a hurricane is right there within your satellite range. Again, Idalia, right now the center, by the way, the center is currently at 20.1, 85.5. So it's very close to the west coast of Cuba, whether or not you'll get an actual landfall. The tip of Cuba there is right there. And so if the center does move, it could cross western Cuba, but the land is so flat and moist, there's no real threat of weakening. So we're going to watch as Idalia intensifies into a hurricane and then a stronger hurricane and takes a track towards the western coastline of Florida. Stay tuned for further tropical updates. I'm Mike Naso, and I'll talk to you next time with more on Idalia.